From laughter to loneliness, the man behind the smile, David Walliams, is best known to the world as a comedian, actor, author, and longtime judge on Britain's Got Talent. With his sharp wit, flamboyant humor, and seemingly boundless energy, he has made millions laugh and inspired children through his best-selling books. To many, he is the life of the party, a man who thrives in the spotlight and enjoys the adoration of audiences around the globe. But behind the curtain of fame lies a much darker story. Walliams' life, while filled with success, has also been marked by pain, insecurity, and tragedy. His struggles with mental health, his battles with loneliness, and his yearning for acceptance have created a narrative far more complex than the one fans see on television. The untold story of David Walliams is not simply about fame and fortune. It is about a boy who grew up feeling different, a man who turned his insecurities into comedy, and an artist who, even at the height of success, has never stopped battling inner demons. Early life and the seeds of comedy. David Edward Walliams, later known professionally as David Walliams, was born on August 20th, 1971, in Merton, South London. His father, Peter Walliams, was a London transport engineer, and his mother, Kathleen, was a lab technician. The family lived a modest life in Surrey, where David grew up alongside his sister, Julie. From an early age, David was drawn to humor as a form of self-expression. In school, he was often the class clown, quick with a joke or impression. But beneath the laughter was a boy who felt awkward and different from his peers. Sensitive, highly imaginative, and sometimes painfully shy, David struggled to fit in. Television became both a refuge and an inspiration. He idolized comedians like Ronnie Barker, Peter Sellers, and Frankie Howard, absorbing their timing and delivery. He began performing sketches for his family, testing the waters of comedy long before he set foot on a stage. Still, the young David carried insecurities that would follow him for decades. He later admitted to feeling alienated as a child, sensing that he was not like everyone else. This sense of otherness became a driving force in his life, pushing him toward performance as a way to gain acceptance. Cambridge and the road to comedy. After finishing school, David attended the University of Bristol, where he studied drama. His passion for acting and writing deepened, and he began honing the skills that would one day make him a star. It was during this period that he joined the prestigious National Youth Theatre, a breeding ground for future British talent. There, he met Matt Lucas, a fellow aspiring comedian who would later become his creative partner. The two quickly bonded over their shared love of absurd humor and their ability to make each other laugh. The partnership would become one of the most successful comedy duos of their generation. Together, they created sketches, honed characters, and dreamed of one day reaching television. But success did not come quickly. In the early years, both men struggled to find steady work. They took small roles in television shows and commercials, often scraping by financially. Yet their determination never wavered. They believed in their comedy and in each other. Little Britain and the rise to fame. That belief paid off spectacularly in the early 2000s with the creation of Little Britain. The sketch show, co-written and performed by Walliams and Lucas, was unlike anything British television had seen in years. Its outrageous characters, biting satire, and politically incorrect humor made it both wildly popular and fiercely controversial. Walliams thrived in the show's outlandish roles, from the flamboyant Emily Howard, the rubbish transvestite, to the over-the-top Sebastian Love, the Prime Minister's infatuated aide. His ability to throw himself into absurd and often shocking characters cemented his reputation as a fearless performer. Little Britain became a cultural phenomenon, winning awards and attracting millions of viewers. It propelled both Walliams and Lucas into the national spotlight, transforming them into household names. Yet, even as fame grew, cracks began to show. Walliams, who seemed endlessly confident on screen, often felt insecure and anxious off it. He struggled with the demands of fame, the scrutiny of the press, and the challenge of living up to the success of the show. The dark side of humor comedy for Walliams was both a gift and a shield. It allowed him to express himself, to win love from audiences, and to mask his inner struggles. But it also became a way of hiding, a mask that covered his pain. He later admitted that his humor was often driven by fear, fear of rejection, fear of being unloved, fear of being exposed as vulnerable. By making others laugh, he could deflect attention from his own insecurities. But when the laughter faded, the fear returned. Walliams struggled with depression from an early age. He described it as a blackness that descended without warning, robbing him of joy and filling him with despair. At times, the depression became overwhelming, leading to self-destructive thoughts. In interviews, he has spoken candidly about suicide attempts in his past, revealing just how deeply his mental health struggles cut. For a man who seemed to have everything, fame, fortune, and adoration, the reality was far darker. Britain's Got Talent. A new role. In 2012, Walliams joined the judging panel of Britain's Got Talent, sitting alongside Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and Alicia Dixon. The move surprised some. Could a sketch comedian adapt to the world of talent competitions? Walliams proved to be a natural. His larger-than-life personality, playful banter, and willingness to poke fun at himself brought a fresh energy to the show. He quickly became a fan favorite, known for his comedic interactions with contestants and his tongue-in-cheek flirtations with Simon Cowell. The role showcased a softer side of Walliams. He celebrated quirky contestants, encouraged nervous performers, and often showed genuine empathy. For many viewers, this was the David Walliams they came to love. Not just a comedian, but a man with heart. But even as he charmed audiences, Walliams's private struggles continued. Fame remained a double-edged sword, offering adoration while deepening his sense of isolation. Relationships and heartbreak. Walliams' personal life has often been the subject of media scrutiny. His high-profile relationships, including his marriage to supermodel Lara Stone, fascinated tabloids. The couple married in 2010 and welcomed a son, Alfred, in 2013. To the outside world, it seemed like a fairy tale romance. The comedian and the supermodel building a family together. But the marriage was short-lived. In 2015, Walliams and Stone divorced, citing irreconcilable differences. The breakup was devastating for Walliams. He has spoken of the heartbreak, admitting that he felt broken by the end of the marriage. Friends noted that the divorce deepened his struggles with depression and loneliness. His relationships since have been sporadic, with Walliams often retreating into privacy. Despite his public persona as a flamboyant extrovert, he has described himself as deeply lonely at times, a man who craves love and connection but struggles to sustain it. The writer for children. Amidst his comedy and television work, Walliams discovered a new outlet, writing for children. In 2008, he published his first children's book, The Boy in the Dress. The story, inspired by his own childhood feelings of being different, was both humorous and poignant. The book was a success, and Walliams quickly followed it with more titles, including Mr. Stink, Billionaire Boy, and Gangsta Granny. His books resonated with children, blending outrageous humor with heartfelt messages about acceptance, kindness, and individuality. Within a decade, Walliams became one of the most successful children's authors in the UK, often compared to Roald Dahl. His books sold millions of copies worldwide, and several were adapted into television specials. For Walliams, writing was more than a career move. It was a way of reaching children who, like him, felt different. It was a way of offering hope and laughter to those who needed it most. Yet even this success carried its own pressures. He feared comparisons to Dahl, and critics sometimes accused him of recycling old tropes. But his impact on young readers was undeniable. Fame and its shadows. Walliams' career has been extraordinary. Comedy icon, best-selling author, beloved television judge. Yet at every stage, shadows have loomed. His struggles with depression, loneliness, and self-worth have never disappeared, no matter how bright the spotlight. He has described his life as a battle between two selves: the confident performer who thrives on stage, and the vulnerable man who feels unloved and misunderstood. At times, he has admitted, the gap between these selves has nearly destroyed him. What makes Walliams' story so heartbreaking is not just his pain, but the contrast between his public image and private reality. To millions, he is a symbol of laughter. To himself, he is often a man struggling to hold on. Controversies, collapse, and the cost of comedy. If the first half of David Walliams' life and career revealed the boy who became a star, the second half has shown the tragic price of fame. Behind the dazzling television appearances, best-selling books, and relentless humor is a story filled with controversy, loneliness, and repeated battles with the same darkness that haunted him as a child. To understand Walliams fully is to move beyond the laughter and into the shadows he has often tried to conceal. The Britain's Got Talent years. When David Walliams joined the judging panel of Britain's Got Talent in 2012, the move seemed inspired. At a time when Simon Cowell's sharp critiques dominated headlines, Walliams brought levity. He flirted with Simon on air, bantered with contestants, and championed quirky, unusual acts that might otherwise have been overlooked. Almost instantly, he became a fan favorite. Audiences adored his eccentricity, his ability to poke fun at himself, and his warmth toward nervous contestants. For the first few years, he seemed to have found his perfect role, the comedian turned television personality who could entertain families without resorting to the outrageous sketches that had once divided opinion on Little Britain. But television is a demanding beast, and the pressures of fame did not ease. The more successful he became on Britain's Got Talent, the more closely he was scrutinized. His every gesture, every word, every off-screen action was magnified by tabloids and social media. Public image versus private pain. In interviews during his BGT tenure, Walliams admitted that while he loved entertaining the public, the private cost was immense. Off-screen, he often returned home to an empty house, exhausted and lonely. His divorce from Lara Stone left a wound that had not fully healed, and though he had partial custody of his son Alfred, the boy lived primarily with his mother. Walliams confessed that he longed for companionship, but struggled to find lasting relationships. Fame complicated romance, and his flamboyant public persona often overshadowed his true self. Potential partners, he feared, fell in love with the image of David Walliams the entertainer rather than David the man. This disconnect deepened his sense of isolation. While millions adored him, he often felt profoundly alone. The depression returns. The stress of his BGT schedule combined with his personal struggles contributed to a resurgence of depression. Walliams has described his mental illness as unpredictable, a black cloud that descends without warning. Even during moments of triumph, he could feel despair creeping in. At the height of his BGT fame, he admitted to friends that he sometimes considered walking away from it all. The laughter, the applause, the adoration, none of it erased the emptiness he felt inside. He had long used comedy as a shield against these feelings. But as he grew older, the shield grew weaker. He began to speak more openly about his struggles, hoping to reduce stigma around mental health. Yet even his honesty could not fully protect him from the relentless pressures of fame, controversies, and scandals. By 2022, David Walliams had spent a decade as one of the most recognizable faces on Britain's Got Talent. For many viewers, he was the heart of the judging panel, playful, irreverent, and unafraid to poke fun at both contestants and his fellow judges. He had turned what could have been a conventional reality competition into a stage for his flamboyant humor, becoming a counterbalance to Simon Cowell's sharp critiques. But in an instant, that carefully built persona crumbled. The turning point came with the leak of off-camera recordings from a BGT taping. In the audio, Walliams could be heard making crude, derogatory remarks about contestants. These comments, never intended for broadcast, were captured during breaks between performances, moments when he, like many performers, may have felt off guard, joking in ways he assumed would remain private. Yet when the recordings were published by the press, they triggered a storm of outrage. What made the revelation so damaging was not just the language itself, but the stark contrast between Walliams' on-screen image and his private words. Here was a man who had built his career entertaining families, celebrated for championing eccentric performers and vulnerable contestants, suddenly exposed as mocking the very people he was meant to encourage. For critics, the hypocrisy was glaring. For fans, the disappointment was profound. Walliams quickly issued a public apology. He admitted his remarks were disrespectful and inappropriate, expressing regret for the hurt they caused. But apologies, however sincere, could not erase the headlines. The damage was immediate and far-reaching. Within weeks, reports surfaced that Walliams would step down as a judge, ending his 10-year run on the program. For a man who had once been the most celebrated addition to the panel, the downfall was brutal. The British press, which had long delighted in Walliams' antics, now turned on him. Articles that once praised his charm now dissected his flaws. Social media amplified the outrage, with former fans expressing dismay and betrayal. The scandal also struck at the core of Walliams' identity. His role on BGT had not only given him visibility, but had also offered a new chapter in his career, a reinvention that softened his image from edgy sketch comedian to mainstream entertainer. It gave him a connection with audiences that felt warm, even affectionate. Losing it under such circumstances felt like more than a professional setback. It was a public humiliation, a reminder of how fragile and unforgiving fame can be. Retreat from the spotlight. After his departure from Britain's Got Talent, Walliams largely disappeared from the public eye. For a man who had spent years thriving on attention, the retreat was noticeable. While he continued to publish children's books, which remained successful, and made the occasional television appearance, his presence in the entertainment world diminished. The flamboyant judge who had once dominated headlines seemed suddenly muted, even absent. Friends and colleagues later described him as heartbroken by the way his BGT tenure ended. They said he felt abandoned by a show he had helped define for more than a decade. To Walliams, the dismissal was not just about losing a job, it was about losing a family. The camaraderie of the judges' panel, the buzz of the live audience, the rhythm of the talent show season, these had given him a sense of stability. Without them, he felt unmoored. His withdrawal from the spotlight also reflected something deeper: his ongoing battle with depression. The scandal had intensified feelings of rejection and insecurity that had haunted him since childhood. Walliams had long admitted that applause was his lifeline, the thing that kept the blackness of depression at bay. Now stripped of that applause, he faced silence, a silence that for him was deafening. For a performer whose very identity was built around being seen, heard, and celebrated, the retreat was devastating. Friends noted that he became more reclusive, choosing quiet time with his son over public engagements. While fatherhood provided him with a measure of comfort, it could not fully replace the thrill or the validation of performance. In many ways, Walliams' retreat underscored the tragedy of his story. He had risen to extraordinary heights, only to see his career derailed by a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment caught on tape. The fallout revealed not just the precarious nature of celebrity, but also the profound vulnerability of a man who, despite all his success, had never escaped the insecurities of his youth. For Walliams, the controversy was more than a scandal. It was a mirror reflecting the fragility of the persona he had so carefully built. And in the silence that followed, he was forced to confront the question he had long tried to avoid. Who is David Walliams when the laughter stops? Writing as solace through it all, Walliams continued to write. His children's books remained bestsellers, and he took solace in knowing that his work inspired young readers. In many ways, his writing became his lifeline, a way of reaching out to children who, like him, felt different or misunderstood. Characters in his stories often reflected his own struggles: outsiders seeking acceptance, children who felt unloved, families torn apart by misunderstanding. By giving these characters happy endings, Walliams perhaps sought to rewrite his own. Yet even this success carried a shadow. Critics accused him of relying too heavily on crude humor or stereotypes, drawing comparisons to the more nuanced works of Roald Dahl. Walliams defended his writing, insisting that children responded to humor and that his stories carried deeper messages of kindness and resilience. Still, the criticisms added to the weight he already carried, reminding him that no success was ever immune to scrutiny. The loneliness of fame. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of Walliams' story is the loneliness that has accompanied his fame. Despite his flamboyant personality, he has repeatedly described himself as shy, awkward, and insecure in private. His friendships within the entertainment industry, though numerous, often failed to provide the intimacy he craved. His marriage had ended in heartbreak. Attempts at new relationships faltered. For all his visibility, he often felt unseen. Walliams once admitted that he longed for a family life like the one he gave his characters in children's books: warm, stable, loving. Instead, his reality was often nights alone, battling the same insecurities he had felt as a boy in Surrey. This loneliness, compounded by depression and the harsh judgment of fame, created a cycle that was difficult to escape. Each new controversy deepened his isolation, and each retreat from the spotlight reinforced his sense of alienation. The hero beneath the pain. Yet it would be unfair to define Walliams solely by his struggles. Even amid tragedy, he has shown remarkable resilience. His charity work, particularly his marathon swims across the English Channel and the Thames, raised millions for causes such as sport relief. These feats demonstrated not only his physical endurance, but also his determination to use his fame for good. He has also remained a devoted father to his son Alfred, despite the challenges of co-parenting after divorce. Friends say he cherishes his role as a father and finds joy in spending time with his child. In many ways, fatherhood has been his greatest source of strength, grounding him in a life too often defined by chaos. The legacy of pain and laughter. David Walliams' story is heartbreaking precisely because it is so full of contradictions. He is both a beloved entertainer and a deeply lonely man, a champion of children and a victim of scandal, a figure of resilience and one of vulnerability. His career has been defined by laughter, but his life has been marked by sadness. His success has brought him fame and fortune, but it has never fully healed the insecurities of his youth. For every triumph, there has been a tragedy. For every applause, a silence. David Walliams' life story is not simply about comedy or controversy. It is about the tragic cost of living in the spotlight while fighting private battles that few can see. His time on Britain's Got Talent brought joy to millions, yet it also exposed him to humiliation and heartbreak. His books have inspired children worldwide, yet they also reveal the pain of a man still searching for love and acceptance. Walliams remains one of Britain's most complex entertainers, a man whose smile hides wounds, whose laughter masks loneliness, and whose legacy will forever be shaped by both triumph and tragedy. David Walliams made millions laugh, but his life has been filled with moments that were anything but funny. From a sensitive boy in Surrey who felt different, to a comedy superstar with Little Britain, to a judge who lit up Britain's Got Talent, Walliams seemed to have it all. Yet behind the curtain, there was heartbreak, a painful divorce, battles with depression, loneliness that fame could never cure, and scandals that shook his reputation. His story is a reminder that even those who appear larger than life often carry invisible wounds. Laughter, for Walliams, was both a gift to the world and a shield for himself. And perhaps that is his greatest tragedy. The man who gave joy to millions has often struggled to find it for himself. But what do you think? Is David Walliams' legacy defined more by his controversies or by the laughter and inspiration he brought to so many? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep uncovering the untold truths behind the world's biggest icons, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You're watching Icon Legends, where behind every spotlight, there is a story waiting to be revealed.